Hey, Paul here for Retro Gaming Arts, and today I'm going to show you exactly how I mod my PS1s. This isn't going to be a full-fledged tutorial, but I'm just going to kind of walk you through exactly how I mod them. And for special video-ness, we're going to be doing two at the same time, because that's cool, right? Yeah, so let's do it. So we're going to start off with two chips because we got two boards and I already have enough wires stripped for the two boards. And the first thing I do is I prep my chips. Now, I bend all the different pins out and then I trim them down and then I add flux to them and then I tin them all up with solder and I use the little clamps to hold it and make my life easier. And then I apply my flux with a paintbrush or whatever I have laying around. Now, the reason why this isn't a full-fledged tutorial is because every single PS1 motherboard has a different install diagram, and then also different chips can have different diagrams based upon the chips, the PS1, etc. So to show you how to install it on one wouldn't help so much because depending on your PS1 it will be very different. So anyway, back to the flux. I'm also, after I added all the flux to the chips, I'm also adding the flux on the points of the board that for my particular boards, I'm doing it on both the same motherboard revision to make my life easier. And I'm just adding all the flux to everything and then we're going to tin everything up all at the same time. Pretty much I'm going to be doing the same thing twice throughout this whole video, essentially. So we're just tinning up the chips right now that there's flux on it. The flux just makes the solder stick easy, which makes soldering to it easy, and it gets a better solder connection. So that's why I like to use that. Makes my life easier. So here we go, just tinning up all these. And then after we tin all these up, we're going to place the chips. And also that varies based upon the motherboard as well, because there's a metal piece that goes on top of the motherboard. And depending on where you put the chip, it may not shine, there might not be enough clearance for it. So I just use a little bit of double-sided tape and I cut it into place and then I use that to stick to the bottom of the chip and then I stick the chip in place. Now also your chip orientation matters as well. And here we go, we're tinning all of the wires. So now that all the points are tinned for pretty much everything, all you'll have to do is press them together with some solder. So you do a lot of this prep work first, which, you know, takes a little bit of time, but it'll make everything easier in the end. So here we go, I'm gonna start tinning up all the points for both boards. I'm not gonna show all of this because this part might take a little while, so I'm gonna skip through that so you can see more, but you get the idea. So we're just gonna, now that all of those are tinned up, we're just gonna add all the wires to each one. And since I'm doing it on two boards, I'm gonna do the same point on the first board, then the same point on the second board. And then just go back and forth like that. So, as I said before, each PS1, it's completely different depending on. This particular model is the PU23 is the name of the motherboard, and then it's for the SCPH-9000. It's the 9000 series motherboard. I believe it's one of the latest revisions before the PS1 Mini, and it doesn't have the I/O port, and it's like the most stripped down, and it's also, to my knowledge, it's the smallest motherboard as well. So here we have a whole bunch of different points going on to the board, and I just kind of cut all my wires around the same length, tin one strip, tin one side, then I solder all the wires to the board first, and I get all that done. And as I said, I'm doing it for both boards. And then here you got some of those little resistors. Those ones can be probably the trickiest ones, is the resistors, and I actually don't tin the resistors first. Those are the only ones that I don't tin, and I usually just the flux and the tinned wire is good enough, and then you just push down with the soldering tip right onto the edge of the resistor, and it usually does it. And right there, how I cut that wire, now it was stripped and tinned, but I cut off the excess as it was tinned, which also makes cutting it easier because it's soldered. So you can get just a tiny little nub. Like you see how long that one is, and you see how I now cut it practically in half. That's going to make soldering it to these little points or these little resistors a lot easier. And I pretty much do that to every single one. And that's how I prep my wires. That makes a lot of this a lot easier. Is you tin the whole thing, and then you cut just the tiniest little bit that you need. So the little edge is still tinned. You don't melt the edge of the plastic coating on the wire, and then all you have to do is gently press down. So now we have all those wires, all the wires are up. Now the second half is the wire placement, and then the wire management, and then getting it to the chip. So pretty much I'm just gonna eyeball exactly where I think, or how long I think the wire should be. And then I'm gonna tin it after I strip it. So each one gets pulled to the measurement that I think it's gonna be, cut, stripped, tinned in the moment, and then soldered. And then the tweezers really helps to hold it in place. And then for this particular one, I'm gonna, after I solder it, then I'm gonna go back and push it into the exact place. Now, this is moderately pretty easy. All of the footage for this entire video, it was 35 minutes long. So I did all of this in 35 minutes. And then tried to, edit out all like the little stuff that you may not need to see and all of that. But it was about 35 minutes to do two at the same time. So that's probably 25 minutes to do one, because doing two, you're pretty much just taking the extra step. You're not doing the whole thing again. And like I said, with the tweezers really makes a huge help on making this a lot easier. Sometimes you can just use your fingers and you don't even need the tweezers, but either way, they're there, and it's a nice tool, and it's a nice extra hand. And like I said, how I strip, tin, and do it all in the moment, that one I didn't even have to tin because the point on the chip was tinned. So you just have to press it on. It makes your life easier. But as I was going to say before, this is kind of it's an easier mod to do. The only thing is you just have to have the right chips and the right install points, and then it's pretty easy. Now, I wouldn't say first try beginner easy, because of the small resistors. That could be slightly tough if you're just starting out, but if you have any sort of any practice with a soldering iron before, this is a good one to tackle, which then can prepare you for tougher jobs in the future. So, and honestly, this one's fun. It's a nice, quick little mod, and I have a lot of fun while doing it, and that's probably why I did 5, and like, I'll do 5 more, because it's fun. And that's the point of all of this, is to have fun, not just while playing your games, but while enhancing your gameplay capabilities. Or in this chip's case, enhancing the fact that you can play much more games than you could have, because you could just burn a game and play it, and you can also play imports, and that's cool. Why not? Why wouldn't you want your PlayStation to have that? You know what I mean? So here on these little ones, since they're little, a good way to tell if you have a good solder connection is giving it a little tug on the board. So, but even though when I strip these, I still hold the wire down. For some connections, you can just strip it and the solder connection will hold it, but I just don't want to risk ripping off a resistor or anything like that, so I still hold the wire down as I'm stripping it. And like I said, here come those tweezers, just making life easy. Alright, so now we're on to the next one. Cut to length, strip, tin, tweezers, solder. Cut, strip, tin, tweezers, solder. Can't even say that all times in a row, but you get the idea, because I've done it on everyone, so you see it. I don't know how you guys do it, but this is how I do it, and this is just how I like to do it, and I just wanted to show how I do it, because why not? And then every time I do it, the wiring pattern's always different. I did these two the same only because I was doing them at the same time. I don't know why all my wire patterns are always different every time I do it. But hey, it's fun. Just find a new way to do it every single time. That's what keeps it fun. Get this one going all the way to the bottom. So another thing to take note of, which I said because this isn't a full-fledged tutorial, I didn't point out which one is pin 1 through 8 on the orientation of the chip, but that's always something you should start with and pay attention to, is what the chip's pinout is, because you don't want to accidentally do it backwards. It doesn't work, and then you're like, why doesn't it work? And it's like, oh, because, and then you got to turn the chip in. It's a whole big thing that it's always just good to know the orientation first off. And get a nice little strip. I'm not actually a particular fan of the wire strippers that I'm using for this, but for some reason they don't work well, but they work well. I think they're dull is what I'm trying to say, is they're just dull because I've been using them for a really long time. So they're dull, that's all. But they still get the job done, just not perfectly. And as I said, this is a great mod to do if you're just kinda getting into modding, or if you have been for a little while, or if you know exactly what you're doing. Just go do another PS1 because it's fun. Tin that wire, tweezer, cut, strip, tin, tweezer, solder. Yeah. There you go. Nice. And then this one I wanted to get around. I wanted to get it around the chip, make it look nice and taut, and then go up. And then it matches the color of the one that's onto pin 1, because they're both yellow, so it's kind of going all the way through. And then we got that length. Cut it, strip it, tin it, then solder. Oh, I didn't tin that one. Didn't have to because the chip's tin, so you don't always need to. And then the exact same point, the exact same wire, but just on the other board. And then just move that one into place. And then we're going to just finagle these with the tweezers. I like to use the wire's actual metal bend to bend them into place, so you can actually just tweak and bend the wires as they're there. Like this right here, where you can actually just bend it to get it to nice into place, and that'll help it stay onto the board. So that's what I do. And yeah, I hope you found this interesting. If you do, let me know in the comments, and I'll do other mods and do videos like this with other mods. Or yeah, either way, thank you guys very, very much for watching. Thank you for all your support on all the videos, on the website, on everything. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys very much. Follow us on Facebook, and I'll see you guys next time.